The letter arrived on a Wednesday. No return address, no forewarning, just a beige envelope with the company watermark embossed like a smirk. Lena Ruiz sat at her kitchen table in pajamas that still smelled faintly of antiseptic, a knitted beanie pulled low over her patchy scalp. One hand held a chipped mug of peppermint tea. The other trembled as it held the termination letter, effective immediately due to internal restructuring. Thank you for your service. No signature, no call, not even an email. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had onboarded over 70 people at Seabridge Tech in the past 5 years. She'd stayed late on holidays to smooth the launch of projects she'd never get credit for. She'd personally helped the VP's wife find a home nurse when she fell ill. And now? They let her go in the middle of her second round of chemo, under restructuring. Lena folded the letter with slow precision, the way her grandmother used to fold linen napkins when words weren't polite enough. She placed it beside the bottle of anti-nausea pills, next to the insurance claim still being disputed. Then she reached for her laptop. Her inbox had already been disabled, her Slack access revoked, her health insurance portal no longer valid. User. It had taken them less than 3 hours from sending that letter to erase her, but Lena remembered the names. Every developer who worked late because management didn't understand deadlines. Every analyst she comforted after they were berated in meetings. Every new hire she coached when HR tossed them a manual and called it onboarding. Her hands hovered over the keys, not to beg, not to ask for her job back. That part of her, the one who thought loyalty was currency, had been burned away under fluorescent hospital lights. She opened a fresh spreadsheet instead. She titled it, The Real Team. In the first column she typed, named as, department. Strengths, would leave if asked. By midnight, she had 36 names. By dawn, she had 57. Lena wasn't trying to get revenge. Not then. At first, it was survival, the raw instinct to remain, useful to make sense of the abandonment. She used to be someone, a leader, the quiet engine of an arrogant machine. Now, bald and bruised, she felt invisible in the eyes of the very company she helped keep standing. But when her former teammates started texting as cautiously, quietly, it shifted. Did you get let go too? They're saying budget cuts, but then hired some guy from New York for triple your salary. Can I just say, you were the best manager I ever had. We all felt it. If you start something, I'm in. Something flickered in her. Not bitterness. Not yet. Just the memory of who she really was, before they decided she was disposable. 1 week later, Lena walked into an old co-working space in East Oakland. Concrete floors, dusty windows, rust on the radiator. The manager handed her the keys, pausing before asking gently, "You sure you're up for this?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked the length of the main room, where 2 wobbly desks leaned against each other like forgotten friends. Light streamed in through the cracked blinds and landed on a whiteboard someone had scribbled on years ago. She wiped it clean. Then she turned and smiled. "I'm not starting a company," she said. "I'm building a home." It started with Amaya. She walked in on a Thursday morning, denim jacket slung over her shoulder, curls tied up high, laptop under one arm, and a brown paper bag with 2 warm empanadas under the other. "Brought the good kind," she said. "With the green sauce." Lena looked up from her second-hand folding table. Her body was still healing, shaky from the last round of chemo, eyes raw from the steroids. But her smile came easy. "You came," Lena whispered. "Course I did." Amaya shrugged. "You're the only reason I stayed at Seabridge as long as I did. They had me doing 4 people's jobs and acting like I should be grateful. I was just waiting for someone to build a raft." She placed the bag on the table, then the laptop, and then herself. taking the rickety chair without hesitation, opening her screen like it was any other Monday. "Let's build," she said. By the end of the week, 4 more had followed. Josh from data science, who always brought snacks for interns. Heba from project ops, who'd been told she was too soft-spoken for management. Kevin from DevSec, who refused to wear a blazer to pitch meetings and once automated an entire process his manager took credit for. And Charisse, Lena's old assistant, barely out of grad school, who had once color-coded an entire board presentation with nothing but post-its and grit. They didn't ask for titles, they didn't ask for money, they just asked, "What are we doing?" And Lena, who had spent months wondering what remained of her, found herself saying, "Whatever they said, we couldn't." They called themselves Phase 1, quietly, without ceremony. It was a joke at first, a nod to the scrappy test stages they'd never been allowed to lead. But it stuck. Kevin made them a logo on a napkin. Charisse turned it into a minimalist website. Amaya started posting short blurbs on LinkedIn. They weren't poaching, not directly. They were simply building the company Seabridge pretended to be: ethical tech, real diversity, pay transparency, and a no-bullshit culture where being human wasn't a weakness. Within a month they had 9 team members, all on contract, all remote-friendly, all burned in some way by Seabridge or companies like it. And that's when Lena got the message. It was a Saturday, rain in the windows, her beanie tossed beside her, scalp bare, head buzzing from sleep. She opened her phone. From Melissa K. "Hey, Lena, long time, just saw the site. Looks incredible. Would love to reconnect sometime. Things at Seabridge are different now. Hope you're well. Let me know if you're ever free to chat." Melissa, the woman who'd once smiled across the table and told Lena, "You're like glue around here." The same one who stopped responding to texts the moment Lena's out-of-office reply mentioned chemotherapy. Lena stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She typed, "I appreciate the message. Things are different here, too. I'm rebuilding what you tried to erase, then deleted it." Instead, she let the message sit unread. A week later, Amaya came rushing in late, cheeks flushed, breath visible in the cold. "You won't believe who just sent me a DM," she said, practically vibrating. Lena raised an eyebrow. "Half of my old team," Amaya said, flipping her phone around. "They want to know if we're hiring. One of them said they heard through the grapevine that you're the reason the San Mateo contract's up for grabs." Lena didn't answer. Not at first. She was watching the rain slide down the cracked window, the same one that leaked when the wind blew east. She watched people walk by on the street outside, oblivious. The world kept moving, unaware that something small and but seismic was happening in this dusty old room. "They watched them fire me," Lena finally said. "Watched them delete my email, kill my insurance, strip me from the Slack channels. Like I was a mistake." And they all stayed quiet. "They were scared," Amaya said softly. "I know. But now they're watching me build something. And they want in." Lena reached for her cup. Her hand trembled, not from weakness but from something stirring deeper. Resolve. 3 weeks later, Phase 1 landed its first official client, a local hospital network, tired of overpriced, bloated software, looking for something designed by people who listened. The pitch deck, built from scratch by the same team Seabridge had called non-strategic. The code, written with clarity and speed by the same hands that were once told they didn't have leadership potential. And the check, made out to Phase 1, ink signed by a former Seabridge partner. As Lena closed the contract folder, the weight of it all pressed gently on her chest. Not heavy, not painful, just real. She had lost her hair, her health, her title, her sense of safety, but she hadn't lost herself. And now she was something else entirely. Not a survivor, a builder. By February, Phase 1 had to move buildings. The old co-working space in East Oakland was charming, in the way broken things sometimes are. But the ceiling leaked during rainstorms, the heat cut out every other Thursday, and Kevin had nearly electrocuted himself, plugging in the mini-fridge someone found on Craigslist. Lena stood in the center of their new space, a former photography studio in Fruitvale. The floors were scuffed pine, the walls painted warm gray. 2 skylights opened to let in sun, and a crooked exit sign blinked stubbornly above a door that creaked when you opened it too fast. It was perfect. Not because it looked like a tech office. It didn't. But because it felt like breathing. There were no glass-walled offices to signal who mattered most, no ping-pong tables pretending to be culture, no slogans on the wall about disruption or ownership, while mid-level employees got blamed for senior leadership's messes. Here there were desks and windows, and people who had once been made to feel like backup dancers, now finally center stage. Lena's phone buzzed just after 3 p.m. Unknown. Number: Hi Lena, this is Paul Emerson from the Bay Tech Journal. Heard about your team. Would love to talk. Folks are saying you scooped the San Mateo contract right out from Seabridge's hands. Impressive stuff. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Paul Emerson had once done a profile on Seabridge's executive team called Them Visionaries Shaping Silicon Valley. He never responded to her email asking to include the project teams behind the algorithms, but now he wanted her story. She didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she tapped open her internal Slack channel. As phase wins, Lena R. San Mateo signed. Again. We're officially the preferred vendor for 5 hospitals. Cherise just cried in a Chipotle. Happy tears. And also the green salsa hit hard. Josh spent 2 years at Seabridge trying to get a single product past compliance. We did it in 4 weeks. Legends. Amaya. I made brownies. No one judged the uneven pieces. They didn't celebrate with champagne. Just music. Warm lights. Tupperware dinners. Cherise put up a hand-painted paper banner that read, The Ones They Let Go. Kevin raised his root beer and made a quiet toast to the ones who kept showing up, even when no one saw them. But Seabridge saw now. By early March, the calls started, first from vendors. We heard a few contracts are up for rebid. Any truth to that? Then from recruiters. Is Lena Ruiz really your founder? We're trying to understand her trajectory. Then, finally from within, hey, it's Darren from marketing, just wanted to say, I think it's amazing what you're doing. Some of us always saw it, just couldn't say anything back then. I'm sorry. Lena didn't know what to do with the apologies. They weren't wrong. People were scared. She had been too. You don't realize how deep the fear runs in corporate life until you step out of it and breathe clean air for the first time in years. But not everyone was sorry. Late one Friday, Amaya stormed into the office, coat half on, phone still in. Hand? They're trying to call us copycats, she spat. You see this? She pulled up a LinkedIn post, Seabridge's VP of Strategy, Melissa Kane, the same Melissa who once called Lena indispensable. Innovation is more than imitation. As competitors rush to mimic our model, we continue to lead with vision, values, and original thinking. Comments underneath. OMG, love this. Leading by example, as always. Can't believe how many startups are trying to steal your shine. Lena didn't flinch. She scrolled down to the image Melissa had posted, a glossy snapshot of a Seabridge team at some downtown rooftop, smiling, matching jackets, polished teeth, and then she opened another tab, pulled up Phase 1's homepage. There it was, the photo of Heber leading a training workshop at the local community college, Josh and Kevin in an old warehouse testing software on hospital monitors. Candid of Lena, bold and laughing, wrapped in a blanket while coding at a folding table, no filters, no polish, but all heart. Lena clicked, Add new blog post. She typed, We aren't trying to imitate anyone, we're building what we needed when no one came for us. This is for the ones who were let go, passed over, silenced and sick, and still showed up with something to give. We didn't steal your shine. We just stopped asking for permission to glow. She hit post within 24 hours. It had 48,000 views. Within 48, it was on the front page of Medium. By Monday, Paul Emerson followed up again, this time CCing his editor. The article dropped on a Tuesday morning. The Rise of Phase 1, How a Fired Manager Rebuilt. What Silicon Valley Forgot. By Paul Emerson, Bay Tech Journal. It wasn't on the front page, not at first. Just a clean, quiet headline buried under stories of IPOs and acquisitions, but it hit something raw in people. Lena hadn't read it the moment it published. She had been on a call with a hospital administrator in Fresno, explaining how their scheduling app could integrate with outdated legacy software. She still answered phones, still replied to every email herself. She couldn't afford to float above the work, but Amaya had read it. Twice. Then forwarded it. Then printed it. When Lena finally opened the link, it started like this. When Lena Ruiz was laid off mid-chemo, there was no press release, no headline, just a silent deletion from a tech firm she'd helped hold together. Today, she leads one of the fastest-growing employee-first startups in the Bay, built from scratch by the people corporate America forgot. Lena stared at the screen, breath caught somewhere between her lungs and her ribs. The article quoted Amaya on culture, Cherise on purpose, Josh on integrity. It even mentioned the empanadas. There was a photo at the bottom, taken just a week, earlier in their studio, all of them standing in front of the crooked exit sign, grinning like people who no longer cared what exits meant. By lunch, the inbox was flooded. Subject: Loved the article. Can I apply? Subject: We've been following. Your growth. Would love to partner. Subject: Do you offer internships? My daughter's a junior in CS. Subject: I cried reading this. Thank you. Even a few blue-check VCs poked in. Lena ignored them. She didn't want their money. She wanted time. Breathing room. Loyalty that couldn't be bought with stock options and rooftop yoga. But as the noise built, so did the friction. On Thursday, they received their first cease and desist. Seabridge Legal. Cold language. Accusations of misappropriated materials. Claims of trade secret exposure and non-compete violations. Kevin read the letter 3 times before setting it down. This is fiction, he muttered. We didn't take anything but our own damn skills. Lena leaned back slowly. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. Not this time. They're not trying to win a lawsuit, she said. They're trying to slow us down. Cherise, who had been quiet for most of the morning, finally spoke up. We should respond publicly. They want that, Kevin said. They want us to get defensive, to look messy. Lena shook her head. No, she said. Let them. Throw punches, we won't flinch, we'll work. But the smear campaign had already begun. On Blind, anonymous posts appeared. Watch out for Phase 1. I heard they poached and plagiarized. On Twitter, subtle digs from Seabridge execs. Hard to build real innovation when your founders are fueled by bitterness. One blog accused Lena of weaponizing her illness for sympathy. It stung. Not because it was true, but because part of her had always feared someone would say it. She stared at the screen until the words blurred. Was she? Was there something in her that wanted pity? No. She remembered the port in her chest, the icy chemicals, the fluorescent quiet of hospital, waiting rooms. She hadn't wanted anything but to survive. And when that survival was punished with unemployment and erasure, she did the only thing she knew how to do: build. That night, Amaya knocked on Lena's office door. "I know what you're thinking," she said. "I doubt that," Lena murmured, not looking up from her laptop. "You're wondering if you're allowed to be both furious and right." Lena paused, then laughed, bitter and soft. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Say exactly what I'm afraid to admit." Amaya sat across from her. No fanfare. "They're scared, Lena. Not because you're loud, but because you were quiet and still managed to win." The next morning, Seabridge posted a new press release. Seabridge launches new social impact division, led by former Phase 1 contributor. Lena stared at the screen. Contributor. It was Rachel. A woman they'd recruited 3 weeks earlier. Someone who had once taken a Zoom call with Phase 1 smiled, nodded and then gone silent. Now she was their new face. Corporate America's favorite move: co-opt the story, reframe the hero. They wanted the glow, but without the grit. So Lena called a meeting. Everyone showed up early, quiet, tense. She stood in front of the whiteboard and wrote one word: focus. "They're going to try to rewrite the narrative," she said. "Let them. They're going to say we were angry, petty, emotional. Let them. They'll copy our values, rename our work, hire our shadows." And then her voice dropped to a quiet, hard clarity. "But they can't do what we do, because they don't mean it." The team nodded. And just like that, they went back to work. They had a launch coming next week, a pilot to finalize, a product to ship, a truth to live. And that was louder than any lie. Monday morning came cloaked in fog, but inside Phase 1's office the air buzzed like a current beneath the floorboards. It was launch day. The product, Bridgelight, had started as an internal tool, just a clean, intuitive platform that let clinics manage patient appointments, prescriptions, and referrals without having to use 5 different logins and a PhD in navigating clunky dashboards. It wasn't flashy. It didn't use blockchain. It didn't promise to disrupt anything. But it worked. And for the clinics that served low-income neighborhoods, the ones usually given the oldest, glitchiest tech, it felt like sunlight. Lena stood at the center of the office, a tablet. In her hands, eyes locked on the countdown timer Charisse had set up on a projector screen. Behind her, the team was gathered with laptops open, every channel live, every support line staffed, every bug fix logged and checked and triple-checked. 5 minutes, Amaya whispered beside her. Lena nodded once. Her heart thudded in her ribs. Not fear, not exactly. Just the weight of it, of how far they had come, of what this meant, not just to her, but to everyone who had been made to feel like a name tag in a room full of power suits. Across the bay, Seabridge executives were gathered in their own glass tower. Rachel, the former contributor, now turned director of social impact, stood in a bright white meeting room, pointing to a color-coded board of launch dates and press releases. "We'll drop ours next week," she said. "They're soft-launching something today, but nothing major. We'll drown it out." The VP nodded absently, sipping espresso. No one even bothered to name Lena's company. To them, Phase 1 was still a flicker, a headline, a moment, but not a movement. Not yet. At exactly 10 a.m., Bridgelight went live. Within 12 minutes, the first clinic submitted feedback. Just onboarded in 10 minutes flat. This usually takes 2 hours. Who built this? By 10:42, a physician's assistant in Modesto posted on Twitter, "We've been waiting 10 years for software like this. It just works." Shout out to Phase 1 for actually listening to frontline workers. Retweets followed. Nurses shared before and after screenshots. Doctors posted TikToks laughing as they clicked through forms that didn't crash. A medical student wrote a blog titled, "The Tech That Made My Rotation Bearable." At 2:17 p.m., NPR Tech tweeted, "We're hearing a lot about a startup called Phase 1 and their new product, Bridgelight. Anyone out there in healthcare using it yet?" By 3 p.m., Lena's phone had 12 missed calls from numbers with New York and DC area codes, and one from a blocked number. She didn't answer any of them. Instead, she walked outside. The sky had cleared. Down the block, a food cart was setting up, steam curling into the air. She crossed the street, bought 2 empanadas, and sat on a bench beneath a stubborn little tree. She took off her beanie, felt the wind skim the back of her neck. It had been nearly a year since the diagnosis. 10 months since the firing. 7 months since that first spreadsheet with names. She took a bite, smiled. They didn't see this coming. Back in the office, Josh rushed over to Amaya. Hey! Look at this." He held up his laptop. On a private tech Slack group, someone had posted, "FYI, Seabridge just paused their upcoming launch. Internal email says they're reassessing market timing due to competitive saturation." Amaya blinked. "Wait. Are they backing down?" Kevin leaned over, mouth full of donut. "Or regrouping?" Therese popped her head up from behind her monitor. "Either way, they're shook." Lena returned just in time to see the wave of grins ripple across the team. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to, but Amaya walked over and handed her a small piece of paper, a printout of Seabridge's last press release, the one that called them copycats. Lena read it again, then flipped it over. Amaya had written on the back in blue Sharpie, "Legacy isn't built by who speaks first. It's built by who's still standing at the end." That night, a local news segment aired. They were overlooked, let go, told. They weren't leaders, but a scrappy Oakland-based team just rolled out a platform that's changing how small clinics care for patients. Who are the people behind Phase 1? And how did they beat one of Silicon Valley's biggest players at their own game? The anchor smiled into the camera. "Turns out the best revenge, there might just be relevance." The invitation came in a white envelope, thick paper, embossed seal, National Healthcare Innovation Summit, Washington, D.C. Keynote panel. Invitation. Lena Ruiz, founder. Phase 1 Lena stared at it like it might vanish. Josh leaned in over her shoulder. "Is this real?" Cherise snatched it off the table, turning it over in her hands like a rare gem. "They don't invite people like us. They study people like us. They quote us in other people's speeches." Kevin walked in from the back room, munching on trail mix. "Didn't Seabridge keynote that thing last year?" Amaya didn't look up from her screen. "They sponsored it." Lena accepted. Not because she liked stages, she didn't. Her voice still trembled when she spoke too long in crowds. But this wasn't about applause. It was about being undeniable. The summit was 2 weeks away. The team kicked into overdrive, not to impress, but to prepare. They built case studies. They cleaned their data. They documented every small win, every tiny efficiency, every clinic whose staff now had 5 extra minutes a day to breathe. The night before her flight, Lena sat alone in the office. Her speech was half-written. The words were there somewhere beneath the surface, but she couldn't pull them free. Outside, rain tapped the windows in gentle rhythm. She remembered sitting in this same spot months ago, bald and broken, with nothing but a spreadsheet and a heart full of salt. Now she was being asked to speak as an innovator. She wasn't a tech genius, she wasn't a disruptor. She was just someone who hadn't given up when they tried to delete her, and maybe that was enough. The ballroom smelled like corporate cologne and new carpeting, velvet chairs, round tables, lanyards hanging like medals around chests that had never once stood in a clinic hallway or waited in a free clinic line. Lena adjusted her simple navy suit and stepped behind the curtain. The lights were bright. Too bright. A woman with a clipboard, motioned her forward. 5 minutes, she whispered. Oh, and you'll be following Seabridge, Lena blinked. They're here? The woman gave a tight smile. Last-minute addition. Rachel Bellamy, social impact. They said it was important to hear multiple sides of innovation. Amaya, standing in the wings, sucked in a sharp breath. They're hijacking it. No, Lena said calmly. They're scared of what happens if people hear our story without interruption. Rachel took the stage in glossy heels and a microphone wired like a pop star. Her slide deck glowed behind her, words like ethical evolution, reinvestment, and healing through innovation. Lena watched from the shadows. Rachel smiled through her teeth. We believe that true progress happens when companies listen, when they evolve. That's why we've launched our new initiative, to bring human-centered design to underserved clinics nationwide. Click, slide change, a screenshot, a mock-up, a product that looked suspiciously like Bridge Light, only with a sleeker logo and a worse interface. The crowd murmured, applauded politely. Rachel's eyes flicked sideways toward the wings. She didn't say Lena's name, she didn't have to. Then it was Lena's turn. No mic wire, no flashing slides, just her. She stepped up, adjusted the height on the podium, looked out at the sea of industry leaders, administrators, students, and skeptics, and then she began, I want to tell you a story. The room stilled. I was fired while I was in chemotherapy. There was no email, no exit interview, just silence. My access revoked, my name deleted, my insurance cut off within hours. A few heads turned, some stilled. I had spent 5 years helping that company grow. I built teams, I stayed late, I believed in the mission, but I learned something important that day. I was never part of the story, I was the footnote, replaceable. She paused, and then, voice steady, she continued. So I started writing my own. She told them about the warehouse office, the folding, tables, the night spent shipping code with shaking hands. She spoke of Amaya's empanadas, Cherise's banner, Kevin nearly electrocuting himself trying to plug in a heater. She spoke of the clinics, how they weren't customers, they were partners, how Phase 1 never tried to scale fast or own the market. They just listened and built and tried again. No applause yet, just silence, electric, thick. Then Lena smiled, soft but sharp. There are companies that want to call themselves change makers, she said, eyes locked forward. But real change doesn't come from a keynote. It comes from what you do when no one's watching. When it's dark, when you're sick, when you're scared, and you choose to build anyway. She stepped back. Silence. Then one person stood, clapped, then another, then the whole room. Backstage, Rachel was gone. The clipboard woman caught Lena's arm. Just, wow, she whispered. They tried to cut your mic, but you rewired the whole sound system. Lena smiled faintly, blinking back something, tight behind her eyes. No, she said. We just spoke from a place they never thought we had. The offer came less than 48 hours after the keynote. Not an email, not a call. A man in a navy suit showed up at the new Phase 1 office, not with a pitch deck, but with a check. $5 million. Lena didn't even touch it. The man's name was Alan Weir. Tall, clean-shaven, Ivy League watch on one wrist, the kind of smile that looked professionally practiced. He represented Venn Partners, a major health tech venture group with deep roots in both Washington and Silicon Valley, and even deeper ties to companies like Seabridge. He held his hands neatly over the folder as Lena sat across from him, arms crossed. We're very impressed with what you've done here, Ms. Ruiz, he said smoothly. Real impact. You've built trust in places that most of our portfolio companies have spent years struggling to enter. Lena said nothing. We're offering you funding to scale. Proper support, dedicated team, design freedom, autonomy. Autonomy, Lena echoed. Her tone didn't rise, Case, but the room cooled. Alan smiled like he'd been expecting that. Within reason, he said. Naturally, we'd want to align on messaging, streamline certain features to match national demand. Bring on a few advisors. Your E. Advisors? Lena asked, already knowing the answer. Alan didn't flinch. We think with the right leadership around you, Phase 1 could become the standard. National coverage, government contracts, public trust, real scale. And what would happen to the clinics that helped us get here? She asked. They'd still be served, he said, with a shrug so small it almost vanished. But now, they'd be part of something bigger. Bigger, that word again, the one used to justify erasure, dilution, the death of every good thing that starts honest. Alan slid the folder across the table. I understand how personal this is for you. What you've built is incredible. But let's be honest. The market is watching. This is your moment. You can't keep saying no forever. Lena tapped the folder, then slowly stood. You're right, she said. Alan smiled. She slid the folder back toward him. I can't say no forever. But I can say no right now, and I do. That night she walked the long way home through Fruitvale, past the train station, past murals of mothers, saints, children with crowns. She stopped in front of the corner store with the cracked Coca-Cola sign and bought an orange Jarritos, just like her dad used to bring home after long shifts. She sipped it in silence, watching a group of teenagers laugh under the flickering streetlight. What happens if we grow too fast, she thought. What happens if we say yes to people who only see us as leverage? Because that's what Alan saw. Not a team. Not a mission. A trend. Something to invest in before the next thing comes along. Back at the office, Amaya was still typing furiously, headphones in, feet kicked up on a box of printer paper. Charisse had fallen asleep, curled up on the couch, a post-it stuck to her cheek. Kevin was debugging something by flashlight, muttering to himself. It wasn't polished, it wasn't funded, but it was theirs. The next day, Lena called a team meeting. She explained the offer, every detail, no hiding. Then, she asked the room one question. What do we want to become? Silence fell. Josh spoke first. I want to matter where it counts, not in some stockholder report, but in places that don't get headlines. Heber added, I want my work to stay mine. I don't want to ask permission to do the right thing. Kevin cracked a grin. And I want heat that works and chairs. That don't squeak, but I'll settle for a team that has my back. Amaya stood up last. I want us to mean something, she said. Not just win, mean something. Lena looked at them all, tired, underpaid, still standing. She nodded. Once, then we stay small, smart, loud and true. But staying true came with consequences. By Friday, 3 of their partner clinics reported getting phone calls from Seabridge's new outreach team, offers of free trials, better pricing, promises of updates, based on community feedback. 1. Director emailed Lena in confusion. They say they're building something just like yours. Are you affiliated? And then, the worst hit. Their pilot program in Sacramento, 6 months in development, was suddenly pulled. The hospital board had accepted a more established vendor. It didn't say who, but everyone knew. Back at the office, Lena sat, staring at the rejection email. They're going to try and copy us to death, Charisse said quietly. Take everything that made us different and mass-produce it until people forget who started it. No, Lena said. Her voice was even, unshaken. They can steal features. They can rewrite our pitch. They can even buy our silence if we let them. But they can't fake heart. And heart was what showed up when a nurse wrote in from a Mississippi clinic. Your tool helped me spend more time with my patients and less time cursing at my screen. Thank you. Or when an intern DM'd them, I didn't know companies like yours existed. I want to build like this someday. Or when a 14-year-old emailed to say, my mom uses your app at the clinic. She's happier when she gets home now. She talks to us more. Thank you for that. That night, Lena reopened the folder Alan had left behind. She didn't read the fine print. She just took a pen, wrote one word in thick black ink across the cover, and pinned it to the corkboard. No. Right beneath it, she thumbtacked something new, a drawing, mailed in by a kindergartner in Fresno, crayons. Stick figures. A heart in the middle of a computer screen. In blocky, slanted letters, "Thanks for helping my doctor." It was a Tuesday in late spring when the email landed in Lena's inbox. Subject: I shouldn't be sending this from jhoffmanaprivate.com. Attachment: Internal Memo Seabridge, Phase 1. Targeting: PDF. The body of the email was short. Lena, you don't know me, but I've been in the room for months. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. What they're doing isn't just unethical, it's illegal. You built something real. Don't let them erase it. Lena opened the attachment. There were pages of internal memos from Seabridge, strategy briefings, PowerPoint slides labeled competitive neutralization, bullet points that read like confessions, undercut pricing at Phase 1 clinics by 40% to win short-term loyalty, infiltrate former employee base for inside intel, use acquisition threats to fracture public trust, portray Lena Ruiz as unstable, offer VC-backed hospitals long-term packages contingent on not renewing with Phase 1. Her hands went cold, not because of shock, because of confirmation. They weren't paranoid, they were targeted. She called a meeting that night. No slides, no pitch, just Lena at the front of the room holding printed pages with red Seabridge logos, stamped across them like stains. "We have proof," she said. "We're not imagining it. They've been watching us, undermining us, planning our disappearance." A hush settled over the room like fog. Kevin leaned forward. "So what do we do? Do we go public?" Charisse asked. "Leak it?" Josh was shaking his head. "They'll spin it. Say we're retaliating, say we're bitter. They've got a PR firm the size of a city." Amaya stood. "Or we don't say anything." Everyone looked at her. She stepped forward. "We don't need a scandal to prove we belong. We don't need a takedown to build something that lasts. Let them try to sabotage us. Then she pointed at the ceiling. They'll still be looking up." But Lena wasn't finished. She didn't want vengeance, she wanted truth. So she reached out to a journalist who once asked the right question. Paul Emerson. This time she didn't give him a soundbite. She gave him everything. The whistleblower, documents, the targeting slides, screenshots of interface plagiarism, testimonies from the clinics that had been strong-armed, and she gave him full permission to print, so long as it ended with what really mattered. We don't want to be known for what we survived. We want to be known for what we built anyway. The article ran on a Sunday front page. Sabotage in Silicon Valley. How one startup faced corporate retaliation and chose integrity. Anyway, the fallout was immediate. Congressional subcommittees called for investigations into unethical tech, contracting. Healthcare watchdogs opened ethics reviews. 2 Seabridge executives quietly resigned. And Lena? She didn't give another interview. Instead, she sat in a sunlit room in East Oakland, across from a group of teenagers from a community center coding class, teaching them how to build their first app. Not for scale, not for fame, for use. A month later, the National Health Equity Council awarded Phase 1 the Civic Tech Impact Prize. Lena didn't attend. She sent Charisse and Amaya instead. They wore matching blazers, shook hands with senators, and spoke on stage not about their obstacles but about their values. And on the office corkboard, Lena pinned one last item next to the no folder and the child's crayon heart, a photo. Charisse and Amaya holding the award. Beneath it, handwritten in Lena's careful pen, Not bad for the ones they fired. Outside, the city kept moving. Light broke through between buildings. Somewhere, someone was working late for a company that didn't know their name. Somewhere, a sick employee debated telling their boss the truth. Somewhere, a young woman was wondering if being kind and brilliant would ever be enough in a system built to overlook her. But here, in this office, she already had her answer.